Afghanistan falls. August 2021, a former colleague reaches out. We are inundated with requests for help. Can you help? Yes. For 6 weeks solid, almost 17 hours a day, 100% volunteering when I really needed a job and was going through separation.
Oh.
Um, I was volunteering for helping with Afghan rescues. And by the way, right before that started, I was sitting in my study, Psalm 27:4 is above the fireplace, and I just kept begging God. I knew I had to get a job because I was about to be divorced at some point soon, and I needed to figure out how am I going to provide for my family. I said, God, that's what I want right there is Psalm 27:4. If I can do that and provide for my family, please make that's what I want. And so I do this, volunteer for 6 weeks, and I get a phone call from the lead guy, and he says, "So Al, that's what they call me. You've done a phenomenal job. How would you like to get paid for what you're doing?"
Welcome to Testimonies of Triumph, where real stories of faith come to life. In each episode, we share powerful testimonies of how God transforms trials into triumphs, bringing hope and redemption to everyday lives. Whether you're seeking encouragement, wisdom, or inspiration, you'll hear how God is working today, turning even the darkest moments into stories of victory. Now, let's dive into today's episode and witness the incredible power of God's grace in action. Well, Ann, welcome to Testimonies of Triumph. Well, you and I don't know each other. Jordan is here as well, and we're going to sort of just sit back and listen. And I know a little bit about what you're going to talk about, and I'm fascinated. So if you could do me a favor and just give us a little bit of a backstory, though, before you sort of dive in deep where God showed up and all this other really cool thing, all the other really cool things happen. Like, where did Ann come from, and what was life like early on in life, and kind of what were the circumstances that led up to where you are now and kind of the things that you've seen along the way?
You said we have how long?
Yeah. Take whatever time you need. So for everybody in the audience, just kick back and relax. I know. Just
because I don't know. I'm like, wait, what am I talking about?
Yeah.
I was born and raised Roman Catholic. I'm Sicilian. There's German on my mom's side. I've always been a free-spirited, inquisitive, truth seeker,
Okay.
defender of the vulnerable and the weak, you might say. I guess to give the fullest picture in the quickest amount of time, went to Catholic school, all the things, right? I had a child out of wedlock at 19. I want to really watch what I say because I don't want to say things in a.
I get it.
I left the Catholic Church.
Fine. We're not here to bash anybody. I mean,
exactly.
Right? This is God's.
Exactly. That's why I want to be.
Yeah.
Right.
This is God's story. Just tell God's story. Yeah. It'll all work itself out.
Yeah. And so I had a child out of wedlock at 19. I lived a very colorful life for about 5-6 years, maybe in my early adult years. And there's a lot of other things in that. I did have, and again, out of respect for certain individuals, I was pressured. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. Was pressured that if I were to get pregnant again, to have an abortion. I did get pregnant again. I did have an abortion because that voice spoke louder in my head than the voice of God. During my younger years, friends of mine, I did enter public school in 4th grade, I think, and friends of mine gave me Bibles and things like that. And so I would read, and then when I would see what was being taught at Catholic school or at Catholic church, I'm like, I'm not really seeing that. Like, I'm not sure where's the holy water in the, when you get to the door and all the things and all the aerobics and the sitting in the pews and all the stuff, like, where's all this stuff? And then there were a bunch of other things that I wasn't really seeing. And so I just had a lot of questions. And so then I entered that kind of rebellious phase, and then had the child, had the abortion. I was seeing my oldest. I'm the youngest of four. I was
Yep.
seeing my oldest and his wife and their family and the way they were living, and they just always seemed very joyful, peaceful, balanced. Like they just kind of seemed to have their stuff together. And I was like, why are y'all so different? What is going on? They invited me to church with my daughter, who at that time would have been two. Um, they also gave me my first, like, I call it a real study Bible. Again, I don't mean to be offensive. For
No.
me, it was a real study Bible. It was not a Catholic Bible. It was a real study Bible
Sure.
that, whatever. And I devoured that thing. I tore that thing up, and I still have it. And it's held together by some bands. I have many Bibles like that. Um, and so I went as a broken individual. And in September of 1996, the abortion was in June. September of 1996, I believe, is the correct dates. I could be off. During the worship service, I felt the worship leader call out that there was somebody out there that needed to get up to the front. I knew immediately it was me, except that I found my feet,
Sure.
stuck in these blocks of cement, and I couldn't really go anywhere. And he called out a second time, and I'm like, I can't move. I felt tangible things taking place within my spirit. I didn't know what this was,
Sure.
right? Like, I have no idea. The third call, I'm like up at that altar, and in front of like 400 strangers, I am just weeping and bawling, and just over and over, God, please forgive me. Please forgive me. Um, I honestly, I'm not sure that I knew that forgiveness was available for me at that point, because like and again, I hadn't really ever walked with the Lord,
Sure.
right? Like I knew God, I knew God, I knew about God. And listen, I had dreams as a little girl that God gave me, like dreams that I've written down and stuff. And so I know He spoke to me, but I don't know that I was ever actually like walking with Him. And what I mean by that, it's like actually following Him and submitting to Him, right?
Sure.
Um, and so I didn't really know that forgiveness was available for me, maybe.
Yeah.
And all I knew is I I knew that what I had done was wrong, and I was disgusted and felt so ashamed, and I knew it was nothing that sorry, it still is emotional. You think you get over stuff. uh, and so I knew I couldn't take it back. I knew that it was something that I had done, that it was done.
Yep.
And my brother and sister-in-law pretty quickly were up in the front with me, and I'm just crying out, begging him to forgive me. And she just whispers in my ear and said, he already has. And it was like all of a sudden this huge weight was just lifted. And and I'm literally bawling and weeping and laughing hysterically all at the same time, because I feel so much joy and so much love.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of my walk with the Lord, of my real walk. This was no
Yeah.
longer just an investigative project.
Yep.
It was now an intimate relationship that started. And so I would say that is the beginning, literally, of where I am now. Um,
So, look,
yeah,
I appreciate the tenderness around some of this other stuff. I can tell you I grew up a Lutheran kid, which is Catholic light. And I had similar experiences where I would walk into a different denomination and try to understand why it is I wasn't kneeling or standing, or, why didn't we have the hymnal that everybody else seems to have? I get it.
yeah,
This very intimate relationship that you have is a very special thing, and I appreciate you sharing the vulnerability of being there and just being totally broken. And in that sort of surrender, we get a chance to see God's grace come in, and you have this neat relationship. A lot has happened in your life since then. What are some highlights that might be interesting for other people to know about you other than this face-to-face experience you had?
Yeah, so I will say, I at some point, and a lot of things are kind of blurry as far as like specific dates and things like that. I remember events. I don't necessarily remember dates. I'm doing great to remember my four children's birthdays. Um,
I get it.
but I went to school to college, and I was going for a psychology degree. My first two courses were sociology and psychology. Absolutely loved the heck out of those courses. Did great. Um, During a research project, I came across what was called the Ikhwan website, which is the Muslim Brotherhood website. Internet is extremely new at this point.
Okay.
What I saw, I wasn't looking for it at all. And what I saw was extremely disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was all in Arabic. I didn't know what exactly it was, except that I knew that it was bad. And somehow I knew that, like, okay, this is like, I'm not sure what this is. I was intrigued by it. I spent some time there, and I just kind of knew, or had a feeling somehow this was going to come back. I was going to remember that I saw this. Fast forward a lot, and end up getting married. I married my manager at the personal training gym. And 9/11 happens. And when the second tower fell, like my mind was already back at that website, and I already knew who did it.
Wow.
And I immediately started going back and researching. And remember, I told you I've always had like this investigative mindset. I've always been inquisitive, and so I really went just on an investigative journey of who are these people and all the things. And again, there will be people out there who will say, it's not true because it was this date. Yes, I might get some dates wrong, but the things actually happened. They may be out of order or whatever.
I get it.
We were stationed on the East Coast. So 9/11 happens. The husband can't really stay on the sidelines, all the things. He signs up. He had to go through all these waivers and all this stuff. He ends up gone because of his age, all these things. And he becomes a ranger when 175 and is in special operations for 9 years. We're stationed on the East Coast, Hunter Army Airfield. I get very heavily politically involved. All of this research that's happening, I'm seeing all the things that are happening in our country. I'm the typical white American, evangelical, Christian,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. Got very sucked into that whole scene. I started briefing legislators on political issues. I am one of the ones who actually read the entire Obamacare legislation, all like 13,000 pages, whatever it is.
You have
read
the patience of Job.
It's not patience. It is that inquisitive. I needed to know what was in things. Yes.
Yeah.
And so the things that are in there, it's ask me later.
Okay.
It was absurd.
Be a different episode.
Anyway, yeah. So through this whole process, I'm briefing legislators. I'm holding conferences. I'm speaking to crowds of over 5,000 at tea parties and all the things, and and my research in the Islamic threat became a major focus and key theme of the work that I was doing. God started introducing me to people, connecting me to people all along the way. You have to remember, I left college when I started having kids. I had to be a single mom for a while, and there was no way I could do it. During this time, started having kids. We're stationed on the East Coast. I went back to school. Now I switched over to Homeland Security, counterterrorism, Homeland Security degree. And so now all of this research, all these connections, it's like, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, and you start seeing like all the things that are connected in these people. You're like, okay, I met this person 10 years ago. I met this person 5.
You can't make
it
up.
Like these nodes.
Yeah.
You can't. And so there's all these nodes that are starting to like paths that are crossing and all the things. And so I literally have basically this war room, if you will, where my walls are covered with prominent people and connections and the lines and like if anybody had, and people did, by the way, would walk in and they're like, what on earth? And so through all of these connections and people, I started getting involved in some work um, with a focus on the Islamic threat to our country, especially from within our borders and especially from within our own government. Um, I had been thrown out of the chief of police offices because I was exposing their connection to the Muslim Brotherhood. I've been chased by Muslims in downtown areas, and this is in the States, and all the things. And so, anyway, we get to a point through this whole process. I'm getting sucked into this very far right wing evangelical mindset, kind of almost cult.
Yep.
My heart has grown very, very hard towards Muslims in general. In fact, I thought that it was a splendid idea. Let's hold an event for Muslims at every major football stadium and let's bring them and let's like tell them that we're going to host this event, da da da, and then we'll just blow them all up. Like that was my solution.
Wow.
Not only did I not like Islam, but I also thought that all Muslims were demonic, were Satanists,
Yep.
and were evil.
Sure.
We were going to move, and I was going to move to Florida and be even more so with my team and all the things. And then my husband at the time said, well, we're actually going to go to Texas. I fought it, prayed, and God made it very clear, this is what you're doing. Okay. So we moved to Texas. We get a little small 4-acre ranch in a little rural neighborhood. I'm now separated even more so from my team. And for the next 5 years, in September, things happen in September. In September of 2012, I made a decision. I want to know your truth, God. I'm tired of the Bible studies. I'm tired of man telling me. I'm tired of all these things because I'm seeing inconsistencies and I'm really see in some churches where people are teaching people, praying out these really long flowery prayers and all these things and like just all these things that don't like make sense. And I'm not seeing that in the Bible. When you healed someone, you literally said be healed and they were healed. You didn't do this, put on this huge show and,
Right.
and all the things. And so I was like, I just want to know your truth. And I also want to know your truth about Muslims and all the things because right now I literally hate them all. And I knew that it was becoming a problem. And so I made a commitment that I was going to start every day in his word. And I wanted to hear his truth. And whatever that truth was, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how confronting, whatever, if you show it to me, then that's what I'll submit to. And so that began the journey of just me and the Lord every single morning. And it would last for hours, still does, by the way. And I've gone through so many Bibles. It talks about when Moses is receiving the 10 Commandments. And there's that section where it says, they were afraid to go up. And so they said, well, you just go up because we're afraid because no one stands in the presence of God and lives.
Yeah.
I would suggest that's extremely accurate. There is never a day that I can sit in the presence of the Lord, reading his living word, and not walk away unchanged.
Agreed.
And every single day, I'm confronted with other aspects of my heart that have not yet been rendered that need to be. And so that process began in September of 2012. And then we moved to Missouri in 2016. And some more things started happening, some things within some really deep Bible Belt church stuff. Encountered some things, started falling for a lot of the prosperity gospel stuff and a lot more other charismatic things that I was being told and taught and convinced that this is how it is. I began to challenge some things because I wasn't seeing things in the Bible. I've been kicked out of a couple of churches for a couple of reasons, mostly because of challenging and asking the questions. I've been told I have disagree with leadership styles. Well, it's that, and also I was told because of my political views and my views of America. I had become extremely patriotic. I was very much America is the greatest thing since sliced bread and all the things, except that the more I sit in the presence of the Lord, the more that I dive into the word, and the more I sit and receive truth from him, the more I realized I was so confronted when COVID hit. Man, there's so many things I could talk about. In November of 2019, I'm sitting in my study, and this was in the evening, and there was just this ominous, dark, really terrible feeling. I'm like, what is going on? And I didn't know what it was at the time. And all I knew is I felt the Lord telling me, you need to press in deeper and you need to hear my voice. Listen to me and know my voice. COVID hits and all the things. And the mask mandate. I could not wait to go out in public and go into the grocery stores because I wanted to go out there without a mask. And I dare you to tell me to wear a mask because it's my right to not wear a mask. Like, I couldn't wait. Boy, did he, wow. So I'm sitting in my study one morning, and this is all really important. I'm sitting in my study one morning, and I get stuck at Romans 15.
Okay.
And I read the whole chapter, but two phrases jumped off those pages. And for 3.5 hours, he did not seek to please himself, and he became a servant. So I'm sitting there whispering and repeating and meditating and contemplating and just over and over. He did not seek to please himself. He did not seek to please. This is Jesus. This is the Lord of Lords. Okay. He did not seek. Okay. He became a servant. The King of Kings and the Lord, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords became a servant. He came down from his throne and he became a servant. Why would he do that? And so I'm just going through all these questions. Do I seek to please myself? Oh, am I being a servant to others, or I mean, it just got really ugly.
Sure.
And I wept, and I'm like, but it's my right. Okay, you go back in the Word, and I want you to come back and show me all the scriptures where I've told you that you're supposed to fight for your personal rights. I'm like, it's okay, show me.
Yeah.
Fine. Like a couple of weeks later, I come back and I'm like, so it's not in there.
Yeah.
There's like,
oh no. This is not.
Home joined.
Okay, you're back.
There you are. Yeah. And so he just walked me through so much, and he's like, you don't know what these people are going through. You don't know why they believe what they believe. You don't know if maybe they have a 4-year-old at home. It's stage 4 leukemia.
Yeah.
Maybe their mother, maybe their parents are dying from. Well, you don't know. Maybe they've been convinced that COVID is. You don't know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You are to seek to please others first and to serve others. That's what my son Jesus did, and that's what I expect you to do. And I'm like, but he's like, nope. And so that was a big turning point for me. And then January 6th, the insurrection at the Capitol, I would have been one of the ones busting glass.
Yeah.
I had friends FaceTiming me live from the Capitol.
Yeah.
I would have been one of the ones if he had not rescued me. And he made me realize, yes, America is a great nation. That's true. It's not the greatest. And it will fall, just like all the other nations will fall. And so he's just really brought me through so much. I mean, really has. And in that process back in Texas on that small ranch, he really softened my heart for the Muslim community. And then also, November 2019, I saw a documentary, came across a documentary called Sheep Among Wolves. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I have.
Oh my gosh. I was floored. I couldn't sit down. I stood and watched this documentary multiple times. And I knew deep in my spirit, I'm going to have something to do with that. Afghanistan falls. August 2021, a former colleague reaches out. We are inundated with requests for help. Can you help? Yes. For 6 weeks solid, almost 17 hours a day, 100% volunteering when I really needed a job and was going through separation.
Oh.
Um, I I was volunteering for helping with Afghan rescues. And by the way, right before that started, I was sitting in my study, Psalm 27:4 is above the fireplace, and I just kept begging God. I knew I had to get a job because I was about to be divorced at some point soon. And I needed to figure out how am I going to provide for my family. I said, God, that's what I want right there is Psalm 27:4. If I can do that and provide for my family, please make that's what I want. And so I do this, volunteer for 6 weeks, and I get a phone call from the lead guy, and he says, "So Al, that's what they call me. You've done a phenomenal job. How would you like to get paid for what you're doing?"
What?
And I'm like, "Cool."
That
And
sounds
I'm sitting here
great.
thinking kind of a minor amount, right? Which I was going to take. And he gets me in touch with the head guy, and we talk, and he's like, "Well, what salary do you require?" And I paused and hesitated, which, by the way, is rule 101 of negotiating. You never be the first one to give the number. And so then he throws something out there, and I'm like, I don't have my degree, by the way, because I
Yeah,
quit
I
again
remember.
because I
Yeah.
had to raise my kids in homeschool,
Yeah.
which I did. I'm actually back in school now, and I'm a year away from completing my
Good.
bachelor's, and I've now switched to international relations and global security. And so that was the beginning of that. And so that started in September of 2021. And since then, I have been running teams, ground teams and things in the Middle East, developing and managing safe houses, rescuing persecuted people for all kinds of reasons, whether they worked with U.S. coalition forces um, because of their faith, whatever. Maybe they're gay, whatever it is, they're being hunted by the Taliban or whatever. And so operating in multiple countries in the Middle East and throughout Europe, and it's just kind of grown. And so now we saw a lot of corruption in the organizations. And so my team and I, we've started our own organization, our own nonprofit, Global Agents of Change. .org is our nonprofit, and then
Okay.
our for-profit is Key of David Consulting. And so that brings us to where we are today. And in this process, through all of these travels in the Middle East and all this time that I've spent with Muslims, it is the very people that I grew to hate
Yeah.
that are the ones that have actually thrust me into a deeper intimacy with the Lord, because they would ask me, and by the way, through Discovery Bible Study processes, and I can share more about that later. It's an inquisitive Bible. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you read the text and you ask certain questions. You never tell anybody what to think, what to believe, or anything like that.
Yep.
And have led many Muslims to the Lord. In fact, several in our safe houses still very high, prominent uh, men who were in the government and things like that, and are now discipling other community members and
Wow.
family members from the safe house. Um, and But they would ask questions. My partners, my colleagues would ask questions like, "Yeah, well, we believe in Jesus too, but like, you think he's God, don't you?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." And they're like, "Well, why do you believe he's God? Show me." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's
Because
easy." And they're like, "Well, show me scriptures." I'm like, "Okay." And I come back and I'm like, um, okay, so there's not really like scriptures that just come straight away and say Jesus is God. There's like maybe one
sure.
or two that kind of allude to it. And so what did that do? That thrust me into an investigative journey.
Yeah.
And I had to go figure out for myself, why do I believe Jesus is God?
Yeah. And let,
So,
let, let me ask you, in that only because I think you shared with me through your application, we're not talking about a few rescues. We're not talking about a couple dozen, right? The rescues. There are a lot of lives that you've touched. How many?
alhamdulillah, praise God.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know. And it's not like, it's not me. It's not anything, but all I did was say yes, right?
Yeah. Which
And it's
which is fascinating for me because I get a chance to watch at least the sketch that you've laid out of one act of obedience after another in which you didn't know what was going to come next. And then based on what I hear from you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, when you're confronted by something that doesn't make sense, instead of sitting down and asking somebody else, explain it to me, you're saying, no, 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 I need to go figure this out by myself. The Lord and I have to spend some time together to get down to the truth rather than
Yeah.
being influenced by the other people who are around me. And that takes a level of discipline and tenacity and love for this relationship that you do have with the Lord to honor what it is He already wrote down for us. And that's fascinating for me. For people
It's kind of
who,
scary.
it's really scary, and it's interesting because there's this very interesting friction for those people who have been incredibly obedient. The sense of unease and discomfort comes across as fear, yet at the same time incredibly confident in the power of God and the call on your life. Right? It's a very strange thing to try to explain to someone. Yeah,
Oh
I'm
gosh,
gonna
I don't know that I would say confident. I
no.
look,
Courageous.
Well,
and
Courageous.
maybe.
I don't know what to call it, to be
Okay,
honest with you,
that's
because
okay.
there are so many days that, I mean, especially right now. I mean, look, my team is having to start over from scratch. My team has worked together for almost 4 years, but we were working for two other
Sure,
organizations. And again, I'm not going to go into all of those things.
sure.
Some really great people in there.
Yeah.
In fact, from the Saw documentary, if you recall, the Iranian pastor whose head was covered and his Iranian wife, he is probably the most prominent mentor of mine. He has been one of the most profound key figures in my life these last 3.5 years. He is someone who has always spoken truth to me, even when it's uncomfortable to hear.
Yeah.
He has stood by my side to, to kind of be there when I have these raw, hard questions, and will speak the truth. And if I stray, like, I mean, he's, you know, he speaks it, and he's like, yeah, but you're wrong on this. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, show me why, or whatever. But in this season, we've gone through some major transition, extreme betrayal. And when I say betrayal, I mean betrayal of the worst kind. Look, we're never betrayed by somebody we don't know. Betrayal comes from someone that you know,
Yeah.
that you trust, and that you care
You.
for or love.
Yeah. The mere definition of betrayal is that if somebody doesn't know you, they can't
That's
betray
exactly
you.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the most
And so
intimate can.
that's right. And so we have experienced extreme betrayal from within the Christian community.
Sure.
And so,
Come back to me, Anne.
Element home joined.
this occurred. And so we're having to start from scratch. I don't have an income since June.
Okay.
And I've decided to go back to school.
Yeah.
And I've just decided to launch a business and a nonprofit. To say that it's not scary,
That part's scary
to
for sure.
say it is, and to say that no, every day I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, I know that this is what, and if you look, there are people who will tell me, you just need to go get a job or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hear you, and I understand that that's what makes sense.
Yep.
I've submitted over 100 resumes,
Yep.
and I've been turned down from jobs that it does not make sense.
Yeah.
And then I was actually selected for a government position that the process keeps getting pushed back. Like, it's like every day I'm like, God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
When things don't make sense, when they should.
Yeah.
My first question is, what are you doing, God?
Yeah.
And so I understand that from the outside looking in, I should just go get a job. But again, it comes back to the last 4 months, the amount of time that I've spent networking and connecting with other people who have been very key to everything that's happening right now. If I had just gotten a job,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have met these people.
Yeah.
And I know that each of them play a very dynamic role in whatever it is he's doing. But back to your point, every day I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Like, I don't have the faith for this. I'm really scared. I don't know what is next. I don't know. Like, and there have been some times where I'm like, I've never had a panic attack. I've made fun of people. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever had. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I literally think I'm having a heart attack. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But I know that he's doing something.
Yeah.
Like, I know that the amount of time that I've spent in the East and learning these languages and learning the cultures, and I don't know what it is. Oddly, I don't. And it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. From a guy who, I don't know how much of my story you know, but from a guy who was told by God to go sell everything that doesn't fit into 2 pods, 1 SUV, go across the country, and without a friend, without a job, and without a plan, and 2 young kids. I get it. You have more going on than I did, and I think that you also have a lot clearer indication of what God wants you to do right now than I had, based on what I'm hearing. That's all. I
don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that. I don't know. And which, by the way, I'm selling my house. Like, I'm in the process of selling. There's like all these things, and all these people are like, well, why would you do that? Look, I have a VA loan, and it's a phenomenal rate.
Yeah.
And why would you do
right.
that?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
none of this makes any logical sense to anybody else, except for where I heard very clearly that this is what God wanted me to do, so I'm going to do it. Okay.
And I don't even know that I can confidently say that, except that I just have this, like, I'm one person.
Yep.
I don't need 3,200 square feet.
Nope.
Look, the amount of time that I've spent in the Middle East, like, I've just really I've had such a transition of perspective. We are so spoiled, and we live in such a bubble. So many people have these misperceptions and stereotypical viewpoints of so many things happening in the world, and many people have never even left their state.
Yep.
And so that's one of the projects that I'm working on, is a cultural wellness. I've actually already developed it. It's and it's been launched, findinghanasa.com, and it's a cultural wellness course.
Cool.
I'm hoping that employers will use this for their employees who are maybe struggling to get along with other coworkers and stuff.
Sure.
For whatever reason, all kinds of differences, right?
Yep.
But in all of these last 4 years, I've just really come to realize I thought I knew a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I knew Islam, which look, Islam is still there. Anyway, I thought I knew Muslims. Oh my gosh. Do you know there are so many Muslims that, look, when I was in, where was I? Turkey or Cyprus. I think it was in Cyprus. And the call to prayer comes out, and like, we had been there for a couple of weeks, and not one time had we seen one person stop and pray during the call to prayer. Mind you, this is 5 times a day. And so we're in this old town, in this old Venetian palace, and we're outdoors, and the call to prayer comes, and then all of a sudden they break the call to prayer and they just start saying something. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. What was that? I'm like, are we getting ready to get bombed? Like, what's going on? And nobody moved. And so I see this table of guys. There's 5 guys. And so I walk over, and I said to the guy that seemed like the leader, I was like, can I ask you something? Like, what just happened there? He's like, oh, somebody died, and they were just paying respects to them and just, kind of talking about it. I'm like, oh, okay. But can I ask you another question? Why don't I ever see anyone stopping to pray during the call to prayer? And they just started laughing so hard. And we don't give an F about Islam. And I was like, oh.
Okay.
Like, okay. And I was like, really? It's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you want to have a seat? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, let me go get some turkey. So oh my gosh, Turkish coffee. So we're sitting, we have 2 Christian people sitting with nominal Muslims in a Venetian palace, drinking Turkish tea. And we're talking about politics. We're talking about religion. One of them is studying the Torah. 2 of them were studying the Bible. One of them is agnostic, and the other one is a pretty devout Muslim, but still doesn't stop to pray because he doesn't want to be told what to do and when to pray. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Wow. Wow. That had
Yeah, it
to
was
have been
pretty
quite
interesting.
a surprise. The irony in it, right? It just sort of drips.
I'm like, everything I've ever been told was just blown up right here.
Yeah,
It was all
that's
destroyed
right.
right
Yeah,
here.
the emperor has no clothes. You just completely, you disclosed all of the magic tricks right there. It was all done. Oh, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So let me ask you. I mean, one thing is for those people who are watching this or listening, I want them to be able to figure out how to get a hold of you and be able to help. So that's the first thing I want to do, and the second is I would love to hear where you see this in 5 or so years. I'm not here to have you, sort of, uh, do any sort of prophecy here at all. I think that God's probably put something really strong on your heart of something that He would like for you to be able to do, and I'm just curious what that is.
So first thing, there are a number of ways that people can reach out
Yep.
to me and to my team. It's this is not the Ann show. It's not just about me. I
Yeah.
can't. None of this is possible without my team. My ground team is phenomenal. Um, but globalagentsofchange.org,
Okay.
findinghanasa.com
Okay.
is the cultural awareness course, and I'll be adding other courses as well.
Good.
And then keyofdavidconsulting.com
Okay.
is our global security consulting firm.
Okay.
His publishinghouse.com is where you can find some of my books. Not a big deal. It's maybe some other stuff will be added later. There is a blog that has a lot of good articles and things, just kind of from my time sitting with the Lord.
Good.
5 years from now, I literally have no idea.
That's why I was a little afraid to ask this question. No,
Yeah,
normally, I can tell when someone is pretty confident of what's going to happen. And for you,
yeah.
I really kind of expected you to say, I don't know, but wherever God's going to want me, that's where I'm going to be.
Yeah, look, my mom passed away in November.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank God for the job that I have. She had dementia, Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
and I was able to go and be with her for the last 4 to 6 weeks and take care of her. I was there with her when she died. My hand was on her chest,
Yeah.
when she took her last breath and all the things. And in that process, and I used to also be a hospice sitter. In imminent say I would sit with patients until they actually died because I didn't have family to sit with them and all the things. I was there with my father-in-law when he died. So I've seen a lot of death and like all the things. Um, and but especially with my mom and just seeing how things just kind of went back. The world kept going. Like,
Yep.
and my oldest brother, he basically died twice. He went into cardiac arrest twice.
Wow.
And as I was driving down to Dallas to go see him, and he was still in a coma, and like the world's still moving.
Yeah.
And so there's all these profound moments for me, especially since November. And I'm like, okay, the world keeps going. It literally doesn't care if I'm alive or not. I don't know when I'll take my last breath. I have way too much stuff that I don't need. I've seen the way they live in the Middle East and in Europe, which, by the way, one of the other things I've learned is how much they honor individuals, how much they honor family and community
Yeah.
and relationship,
Yep.
and how much we don't.
Yep.
I've learned so much from being in the Middle East.
I'm
And
sure.
so I don't know where I will live when my house, I literally don't know.
Sure.
Everybody's asked me, my kids have asked me, where are you going to live when you sell that? I'm not real sure.
Yeah.
I have some friends in Greece. I have some friends in Italy. I don't know. I really don't know where I'm going. What I know is I'm 49 years old. I will be 50 in February. And I don't want to ever live my life again in such a way that I don't have in mind. I don't know if I will take my next breath or not. I don't want to work just to survive. I want to live on purpose with intention, and I want to be a global agent of change who will go out, engage, equip, and empower others to promote global security, stability, and peace as far as it depends on us. That's what I want to do with the rest of my life. How long is that? I don't know. Where will that be? I don't know.
That's amazing. If you were to give the folks that are watching or listening to this one bit of advice that you've learned in this entire crucible that you have been in, what would it be?
Never trust, always verify.
I love it.
Stop believing everything you see and hear, because it's probably not even close to the truth, especially when it comes to about other people.
That's amazing. I really, really appreciate you sharing your story, and I can see God very clearly working through you. It's amazing to watch. I'm encouraged by your tenacity and your obedience. I can't exactly put myself into your shoes. I can put myself into similar
I'm not
shoes.
always obedient.
Okay.
So I just want to make
Okay.
sure that people know, like, I'm not putting myself out there like this. I am very far from perfect.
Yeah, well, I think that the people who are watching and listening probably know that it's not perfect. I mean, that's the hope, right? Is that because even though we're not
It's very
perfect,
messy.
yeah, life is messy, and our faith is
Yeah.
messy too, right? There's no
So
perfection in it, and
that's the other thing. This is so important. Ask him the questions. Ask the freaking questions. He's not afraid of you, and he can handle your questions. He can handle your doubt. He can handle your confusion. He really can. Quit asking everybody else about him and just go straight to him and ask him, why did you kill the firstborn of all those people that were innocent? What was up with that? How is that in your character? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Who created sickness? It wasn't Satan, because if he did, then that means you didn't create all things, and you said you created all things. Well, how do I feel about the fact that you created sickness and you love it? Like, ask him the questions.
Yeah. Those are great questions, and I appreciate you empowering everybody to do that and sort of pushing, because without that sort of inquisitive nature, it's hard for us to have a real, honest, open relationship with Christ anyway, right? And those are the
I
kinds
would
of things.
suggest that you don't. If you're not asking those questions, you're probably not in a valid, intimate relationship.
I couldn't have said it any better. I think we're done with the interview. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on Testimonies of Triumph. We hope today's story inspired and encouraged you to see God's hand at work in your life. A special thank you to our amazing engineers and production team at Waldrop Communications for making this show possible. Until next time, keep walking in faith, and remember, God's grace is with you every step of the way.